I know you're gonna dig this.
This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles, recorded live here at DATV Studios in Dayton, Ohio. Zooming in all the way from Los Angeles, California, Mr. Bill Champlin. He is a producer, songwriter, lead singer, and keyboardist, and formerly with the group Chicago. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to be with us today, Bill.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing? Are you awake? I'm
Yes.
just waking up at this point.
Well,
If you hear the sound of the slight sound of power tools, we're fixing something in the back of the house, so I can't get those guys to stop. Is it coming through real bad?
No, I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, we're cool then.
I want to talk to you about, you have such a history that we could talk about Bill Champlin for 2 or 3 days and not even scratch the surface. So,
Ryan, first of all, I want to make sure we get this right. It's Champ, like basketball champ.
Champlin.
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 Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill Champlin.
There we go.
Champlin.
That's exactly it.
Got it. Thank you.
I either get Chaplin or Champlain. I was going to do an album once when I had a group called Sons of Champlin. I was going to do the whole front album cover. The title was going to be all the misspellings of the name, which I thought would be a cool idea.
Well,
record company wasn't buying it.
I don't think so. I don't think they were, and because a lot of us get sensitive about us not being perfect.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Tell me about, I'm going to just jump in and we're going to talk about the Sons of Champlin. Let's start about that. You started with this group around in, 1965? Tell me about them.
The Sons started in, I think, 65, and we went until 77, and then I moved to Los Angeles and started working with people like David Foster and Jay Graydon, and I started working a lot down here. I moved here from Marin County, which is right like one county north of San Francisco itself, the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, basically. And it just kind of wasn't working for me up there. Anyway, so we worked up there. I think it was quite a few years, and then I came down to LA and did 4 or 5 years of just really mostly doing my own solo albums, and one tune I ended up taking off and handing it to Earth, Wind and Fire, and they had a big hit off of it, and then that was a R&B songwriting award. And a couple of years later, we did Turn Your Love Around for George Benson, and that was another. I figured, hey, every 2 years I'll get a Grammy. Well, I was wrong. It didn't work that way.
Well, now that you're talking about it, how many Grammys have you had?
I got 2.
Okay. I thought I saw
2 for 4. I was nominated for 4, and I got 2. But I mean, with Chicago, we got a Great American Music Award. I think we were up for a Grammy for something, but and then I got an MVP, which is a NARAS, the Grammy people, an MVP for background vocals, for doing background vocals.
So tell me, how did you end up being with Chicago?
It's LA seems like a large, sprawling city, but the music scene, everybody kind of knows everybody at some point. And that's kind of what we were doing. And I just ran into Danny Serafin. He was the drummer for Chicago, and he was producing a singer that he knew, a really good singer. And I went to do background vocals with it, and Peter Cetera was on the date also. So, I mean, everybody kind of went, whoa, listen to this boy, and this is working pretty good. So, I mean, one thing led to another, and I ended up in the band.
And you ended up staying with them from like 1991 until?
1981 through 2009.
Through 2000. That's a long time to be with one group.
No question. A lot of miles, a lot of buses. I mean, for a while we didn't do busing. I mean, buses were just only bands that were doing buses were country bands. But somebody finally got the idea. It's like, hey, you can save a lot of money, and it's kind of like a turtle. You bring your house with you, which is helpful, you know. So
what was so unique about Chicago that would allow someone as talented as you to remain for that length of period?
Well, you know, I don't even know. It just I thought when it originally came down, they were kind of, I think they were short one guy. I mean, I came into that band around the same time David Foster did, and Foster and I had worked together on a couple of solo records, and we've been friends for years. And I kind of got him into helping produce, you know, into producing 16, 17, and 18, and those were really big albums. 17 was through the roof. Great, you know, did really well. And so David, they were kind of in a slump at that point, and David Foster and I kind of added that new blood that brought him up, you know. And then every once in a while I'd do a record. I mean, at some point after Foster was over with, the next record we used Ron Nevison, who had actually produced some Led Zeppelin at one point and produced Heart, and we did the song Look Away, which was a Diane Warren song, and that took off like a crazy. You know, so it was like maybe the first time I'd done a real lead with the band, other than a song called Hard Habit to Break, which was almost a duet with me and Peter.
You know, Look Away is kind of like a theme song when it comes, especially to you.
It's kind of a rock anthem, and I'm kind of known for singing it. So, I mean, it's one of those ones where if I play gigs or if I do anything pretty much anywhere, I kind of got to do that song. It's just, you know.
So you know, you've been associated with the Rhythm Dukes, Peter Cetera, Danny Serafin, Neil Diamond, David Foster, REO, Speedwagon, Earth, Wind and Fire, Tamara, and Ambrosia, Leon Russell. Of all of these folks, I mean, were you doing backup or were you being a part of the show?
Mostly backup. I got into really doing backup vocals at one time, and it's like I kind of got a reputation for good arranging, and I brought in really good singers, so it really made a big difference. So we did a lot of stuff, Donna Summers records, did some Elton John things. We did a lot of things. Did some Jimmy Smith. I did a record. There was a vocal record with Jimmy Smith, and I'm an organist, a Hammond organist. So, I mean, I was still living up north, and I flew down to do the date. And Jimmy wasn't there. I was going, well, okay, there you go. But, you know, hey. And then, I mean, Lou Rawls and a handful of different things, Kenny Rogers.
You're naming so many talents there.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Smith, the organist, I can, you know, he even came to Dayton, Ohio and played.
Oh, he played everywhere. He was way bigger than people know. I mean, in those days, it was, I mean, you had radio, but it was all AM radio, and he had a big hit. Walk on the Wild Side, Part 2 was a giant hit. I mean, I remember where I was driving with my mother when I first heard it, and I went, I don't know what that is, but I got to get one. I gotta do whatever I can to get one of those things. Hammond organ is, to me, it's like, oh man, it's great. It adds anything to a record, you know. It always adds an extra thing, make it happen.
And you know, one of the people that I've talked to that you have a relationship with is Vernon Porter.
Oh, Vernon, yeah.
Yes. We had an opportunity to interview him, and what an exciting talent he is.
Oh yeah, Vernon's great. He's a good player. I mean, I've only played with him a couple times, but every time was a pleasure. You know, I mean, he was right in the middle of the pocket.
And
which is kind of what we're all about at this point of the game. Is groove is number one. And the older I get, the more important I realize that is.
Yeah, well, let's talk about, since you just brought it up, since you feel that since at the beginning of your career, and you've done so much, but it seems like one of the things that you really enjoyed, and I may be wrong, but just based upon information that I've read about you, is that you kind of enjoyed your studio work. Is that wrong, or?
Oh yes, I love it. I mean, I have a studio. I've built over the years. I've built 1, 2, 3 studios, and at this point in the game, you kind of don't need a full tilt studio. I've got what I like to call it a workstation. I can get all the same things done. I sit at it like a desk, just like you're sitting where you're sitting, and punch myself in and out. I got a mic and a really decent microphone and a really decent preamp, and I just go to Pro Tools with it. And I mean, I just finished an album, and I'd say 90% of the work was done here at the house, which was great because of the lockdowns and quarantine and all the rest of that. All I had to do was walk over to the guest house and start working, and I ended up with an album's worth of stuff. I went to other places to do drums and mixes, but for the most part, I could do a lot of the work here.
So are you still writing music?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. There's no stopping that. Well, I write a lot of stuff with my wife Tamara, and she's way great. She's one of the best writers I know. She's really good. There was a tune that we had. It was on a Tom Scott record that Tamara and Bruce Geich had written this song called "If You're Not the One for Me," and we ended up doing a duet with me and Brenda Russell. And then Tom played some sax on it, of course. And Tom's one of the best sax players and just best musicians I've ever met. And that was one of Tamara's songs, and it did pretty well. I mean, considering it was a vocal on an instrumental album. Those are kind of hard to get across sometimes.
Yeah, they are. But
unless you're Bill Withers, Bill did pretty good with that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I still am a big fan of Bill Withers, even though he's not here. But he was
one of the best songwriters, I think, that I've experienced.
A great songwriter and a raw talent.
Yeah.
He remained a raw talent.
Kept it simple. He didn't go too around the bend, and he had the ability to. He was a good musician. He had the ability to, but I think he realized that accessibility is part of songwriting. So I mean, he was very good at that. I mean, I've learned a lot from just listening to his records. Plus, one of my good friends, James Gatson, was the drummer in his band. James is funkier than a 3-day-old Band-Aid. Man, that guy just puts a pocket down like nobody's business.
So when we're talking about your career, that you come across so humble and lightweight with it, but we know that you're very profound within the music industry, and you've had so many opportunities, so as we talk about this, tell me, what are like 5 highlights that in your career, including the time with Chicago, that really stand out in your mind that, you're saying it was all worth it for just these 5. I'm sure there's more than 5, but could you give me like 5 highlights?
Well, one of the cool things is we were playing a gig with the Suns years ago at Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, and it was a group called the Yardbirds, B.B. King, and us. Oh. And B.B. at the time was using an organ player he was kicking bass pedals, a guy named Duke Jethro, great musician. And part of our contract to play third line on that was to let them use our Hammond. Well, after our first set, our Hammond broke. It blew a fuse, so somebody had to go out for a fuse, but BB had to go on the stage. And the promoter came up to our dressing room and says, BB needs a bass player. And my bass player went over to grab his bass and go play with him. And I just went over and says, Al, have you ever heard of BB King? He said, no. Do you know one song that he did? He said, no. I said, give me that. So I went down and played this show on bass with BB King. And it was one of the big moments of my life. And what a sweet man, just such a generous, just overflowing with groove, man. He was such a great man. I learned more about the shuffle from his drummer, Sonny Freeman, than anything, you know. And then there's us, you know, there were moments with Chicago. We got the most popular group award at the Great American Music Hall one time, or for not that, the American Music Awards, the Dick Clark Awards. And then we played one time it was the We the People concert in Philadelphia. That was about 500,000 people.
Oh my.
It was big, you know, and we played, you know, where in the movie Rocky, where he runs up the steps and gets to the top. They had, at the bottom of those steps, they had a big scaffolding stage. But what was kind of cool about it is aside from the 500,000 people, is that we were second lining, or Grover Washington was second lining us, and he sat in on a song. And there was one little song that we did, a song called Just You and Me. We kind of opened up for jamming in the middle. And I just had such a ball playing with Grover. I forgot there were 500,000 people up there. I mean, usually you play for that many people, you just play the book and don't take any musical chances. But hey, how often you get to play with Grover Washington? So I was just knocked. I said, wow, this is going to be cool. And a really sweet man. I like him a lot. He's good. And what else? You know, I can't, you know, Grammys. I got a couple of songwriting Grammys, R&B Songs of the Year. Those were big moments, you know, that made it kind of got my attention. And then, you know, numerous things at different times. Sometimes something would happen. I do a session. I remember we did a session for Elton John, a song called Little Genie. And it was me and Elton's bass player and drummer was singing, and Max Carl. And we just had a ball doing that. It was great really a good musician. You know, I always think of Elton John as this sort of cartoon, but that guy gets on the piano and he knows his way around. I mean, it's very, very cool to meet somebody on that level. And then I've done, you know, records for Della Reese, and hey, I even sang on background on a LaToya Jackson record. How's that for a rare one? So I mean, there was at one point I was working so much I did a session for Della Reese in the morning and Donnie and Marie Osmond in the afternoon. So at some point it was really kind of a cool thing, especially doing studio work in Los Angeles, is that you had to kind of learn how to sing a lot of different ways to keep it going. And that's I think it's been good for me.
You've liked that variety, because, you know,
yeah. Hey, I did one thing where I did backgrounds for it with Jay Graydon, with Lou Rawls. And Lou Rawls was really, he didn't know it at the time, but he was pretty much my singing teacher when I was in high school. His first two albums, Black and Blue and Tobacco Road, were my Bible. I mean, I'd come home from school and just check him out. And his phrasing was just so good. There was so much phrasing going on with him. I really emulated him. It's just sexy sound. He's great. And we kind of became friends quite a few years later.
And I know that you did a duet with Patti LaBelle.
Yes, I did. And I met her a couple years later.
For a track on Miami Vice.
Yeah, exactly. It was the Miami Vice 2. We missed it by that much. Yes, the first one went through the roof. And then the TV show decided that the second year that they could take on Dallas, and it didn't work. They put him in the time slot opposite of Dallas, and they thought that they'd finally be able to beat Dallas, and it didn't work. So the whole thing kind of went like that. But boy, for the first year, Miami Vice was a major, major piece of work.
Well, you know, it's hard to take on JR. It was hard to take on JR.
Well, there's two JRs. There's JR Ewing, and then there's JR Robinson. I can handle JR, the drummer. JR, the oil magnet, I'm not quite sure. It's a different story.
You know, so one of the things that was also interesting to note that, tell me about when you appeared with Barry Manilow.
I didn't appear with him. I did some sessions. You know, I worked on some of his records. We were, I can't remember there was one song.
Here Comes the Night. Here Comes the Night.
No, it was give me the old songs. Da, 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 da. We did those sessions. Another really, really good musician. You know, people can say what they want about Barry Manilow, but he knows his way around the keyboard, and he really knows voicings, and he's really good at cross voicing and doing a lot of really cool things. I was very impressed. I was well, hey, this guy knows his way around. Because I didn't know what to think, you know. And then, you know, then you go, it's crazy because, I mean, I work with Al Jarreau a lot. Did a lot of Al Jarreau records, wrote a couple for him. And you know, I always thought he was just a really way educated musician and everything. It really kind of wasn't. It wasn't much of a reader, but he had such amazingly great ears that no matter what's going on, no matter what chord changes, no matter how complicated they are, he's just nailed. He was one of those guys, and I miss him a lot. He's sweetie pie. He's a really good guy.
You know, have you done a lot of travel in Europe and other countries as a musician?
A little bit, yeah, not that much. Chicago, when I was with the band, they didn't do a lot in Europe. We did a couple of tours, 1 or 2 tours, mostly like press tours. We weren't working dates. We did a few runs over there, but it was just like when I was in the band. I think now they're slamming over there. They're kicking as much as they can. Well, now nobody's playing. I mean, it's just the nature of the thing. But yeah, I mean, I love it over there. I mean, I've done pretty well. I'm pretty well known in Scandinavia. And in Japan, surprisingly.
You know, it's interesting that you find that a lot of musicians from the United States are really welcomed in Japan. And they like the music. They really like the music.
Well, you know, there's a certain kind of music that I was kind of involved in at the ground floor. And it's sort of jazzy. I mean, they call it West Coast. And it's kind of jazzy. It's a little bit educated, but still pop. You know what I mean? And Sweden and Japan, blondes and brunettes, basically. There's really a pretty large contingent of West Coast fans, and they all kind of know who I am because I was on some of the big records, David Foster Productions, and you know, West Coast sort of started with Steely Dan, kind of following the music, letting the music take them somewhere. Man, that's an honorable. That's a noble music project is what that is. That's really beautiful. Because they let it go. They didn't go, oh, let's try to sound like our last record. You know, managers and marketers would say, hey, sound like your last record. And they were just like, no, we're gonna go where the music's taking us. And consequently, look at them. I mean, the body of work that they've left is amazing. You know, I think the same thing with Earth, Wind and Fire. They just, you know, over the years, they've just gotten better and better and better. Amazing.
You know, during the time that you were with Chicago, what were some of the highlights of their concerts with you?
Well, like I say, that one for 500,000 people.
Besides the 500,000, you know, what I guess maybe let's ask this: what did you learn in that time that made you a better musician and a better business person during those years that you spent with Chicago?
I think those guys have always had a pretty good eyeball on the business. And I think at one time in their career, they had a really pretty good eyeball on music. But I think at some point in the game, you know, it's not really anybody you can blame, but at some point in the game, they really wanted to stick with the old sound. They wanted to make it sound exactly like the old records. Don't change a thing. That's what the audience wants. Just give them what they want. And at one point, the management said when we put out Chicago 17, which was a big record, and the management said, don't play any of the songs off this record. Just play your hits. That's it. And Peter Cetera went, wait a minute. You want to play enough? Yeah, I don't want to do the whole set of new songs, but we want to play a couple, 2 or 3 to let people know that we believe in the record. And it was actually the right thing to do. So I don't know. For me, anything that just keeps growing musically is good. And I didn't feel that was happening there at some point of the game. Early on, it was amazing.
Peter Cetera had a very unique voice.
He's one of the best singers on the earth. He's taking a break right now, but I mean, his solo career was doing quite well. But at some point, I talked to him a little while back. He says, "I don't want to open my suitcase for about a year." He said he was done with touring and hotel rooms and the whole thing. And you know, he's really a great guy and a beautiful singer. I mean, if you listen to the record, If You Leave Me Now, it's like, oh my God, this is just gorgeous. I remember one time I didn't know him. I didn't know Chicago. And I remember the number one and number two records on the charts were, number one was If You Leave Me Now with Chicago. Number two was Living for the Love of You by the Isley Brothers. And I went, I don't know the names of either of these singers, but they're two of the best singers on the earth. I mean, Ronnie Isley, forget about it. Those guys had hits in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and a number one record in 2003. I mean, wow. And when you got a voice like that in front, you can't lose. You know what I mean?
Well, and
Ronnie,
that speaks to.
he wrote the book.
That also speaks to, Bill, it speaks to the morphing of what you said earlier about music growing and evolving. That when you can have hits every decade. Let's say if you got a hit, you've been in the business 50 years and you've had a hit every decade, that speaks volumes to your stability.
Yeah, and also to your talent and also to your sound. I mean, Ronnie Isley, as time went on with the Isleys, I mean, look at I think one of their first hits was Twist and Shout, and it might have been in the 50s. Or just the song Shout. You know, you make me wanna shout. That was an Isley Brothers song. People think Twist and Shout's a Beatles song. It was Isley. Isleys did it first. So those guys, when you have a singer like that, and I think the same thing held true for Chicago. You had a singer like Peter Cetera, you really got a ticket to the big game. You know what I mean? It's just when you and I've always thought there's a lot of singers out there that a bunch of them can do a bunch of stuff, you know, an amazing amount of stuff, but don't have their own kind of thing. You know what I mean? Ronnie does, Peter Cetera does. I think I do. I mean, people who know my voice hear two bars or something and they go, "Oh, that's Bill. Yeah, I got it. I got it figured out. I know who that is." Well, and I think that's kind of a cool thing, you know, to have that.
That shows the professionalism and the understanding of the music industry to be able to have an identity. And you have identity. And, you know, like the Isley Brothers were originally from Ohio. Lincoln Heights, Ohio. When they came out with, was it Shout? Or Twist and Shout, I think they were still here when that one first came out. But you know, to show you how music just travels in such a way that you take you, Bill, and I keep going back to how many folks you have impacted on their music by being in the studio. I mean, your list is just phenomenal. The 40 pages that I just printed off just to have an idea, just to, you know.
I guess I owe you an ink cartridge and some paper.
Just to touch the surface of who you are and what you are. So not only are you a background singer, you are a musician, and you are a producer, you are a songwriter, and then you have this phenomenal wife that you team up with to even do these same things more. So, you know, we're talking about you're a young man in the career business that you're still, once you're in this business, it gets in your blood, and so this is what you grow with, this is what you live with. And so when we're thinking about this, what do you think are some of the things that if you had to do it over again, what are some of the lessons learned that you would like to share for others that would not fall onto the same track?
Well, you know, when I was really, really young, I was taking piano lessons when I was about almost 4, right? And I was reading English. I mean, I was reading music almost before I was reading English. And then at one point, my mom said, "You know, my friend's son plays piano. He plays by ear." So I immediately put down the charts and started to try to build my ears up, which was great. But I should have never put down I mean, if I was better at reading and writing and stuff like that, I'd probably be doing soundtracks at this point of the game. I mean, I've got kind of an orchestral feel in my head, but I'm not the guy that's able to really write it out and make it all happen like that. Nowadays, you almost don't need to because you can record it, you know, and then have the machine write it out. That's all. But I mean, that's probably one of my biggest regrets is that I didn't stay with that side of the music. But somehow I'm still here. I don't know. I'm not sure why. I've gone into sessions and gone, well, here's a reading, read this. But there's no way I'm reading that. Sing it to me and I'll remember it. That's kind of how it works,
But I mean, you've written so many songs, so you get so many credits for that, correct? I mean, you.
Well, I try to, yeah. I've got a lot of stuff out there that's been recorded. Some of them have been. There was a song Lee Rittenauer did with when he had Eric Tagg singing with him called "Is It You?" is a song that I did all those backgrounds on that record and co-wrote the song. Friends in Love was Dionne Warwick and Johnny Mathis, and that was another me and David Foster and Jay Graydon song. We put the backgrounds together for all that. So I mean, I've been around a lot of, sung on a lot of big records. Not necessarily the R&B that I grew up with. And when I moved here from San Francisco, I wasn't digging the Eagles. And then when I started taking dates, doing backgrounds, people wanted me to kind of sound like what the Eagles were doing. And later on, they wanted me to sound like what the Bee Gees were doing. And kind of learned how to do those things. And for me to do any particular kind of music, I got to try to find a way to like it. Because I don't sing because I have to. I sing because I love it. That's really what makes it go. And I think that's a friend of mine years ago said, the first thing to go to tape is who you are and how you feel. Then time, intonation, all the the school stuff, the academic stuff. But I think a lot of there was a vocal coach she said, I'm not, you can go to better coaches that know more about the instrument, but she always believed everybody was born to sing, and a lot of us learn not to.
Oh, that's an interesting concept.
An interesting concept, and I agree with her. I think that singing comes as naturally to people as there's always a few people who just have deaf 10 ears, but for the most part, I think everybody, like she said. I can't remember her name. She's really a good coach in a lot of ways. She's more of a psychologist than a vocal coach. And I think that's a lot of what makes really good singers happen is they just damn well love it.
One of the things I was looking over your materials and I was found interesting that you were a part of the theme to In the Heat of the Night, the television show?
Yeah, I sang it.
Yeah.
It's about the only blues I've ever put out. Surprisingly, yeah. That was, a guy said, hey, man, you want to come take a whack at it? Every other singer in town did. I said, oh, man, Mike Finnegan's singing it? There's no way I'm getting it, but hey, I'll do it on a whim. I was on a break, so I went ahead and did it, and they called me back and said, could you come just do the end line one more time? But you got the gig. And it was like, oh, all right, I'm in there. I'll take it. Who knew that the show would still be showing us, 35 years later?
I know. I mean, it's had a rebirth, It has new fans that have come about in the heat of the night. And I just found that. I said, that is really, when I think of you, Bill, I'm just saying, wow, what a variety of a career that you have had. And so, you're like a roller coaster. You just go up and down in different pots and pans and things like that. I just found that so interesting and that you're looking for the next excitement to keep you going. And I think that...
sounds like addiction to me. It's kind of a drug thing.
Well, it could be. It could be. Yeah. But
the music always just keeps... I mean, whenever I go, the music business is useless, I don't want to do it anymore. I come back to, I like making records. I like making albums. I mean, to me, sequencing an album is as much of an art as writing songs on it. Getting it to where, one song moves into the next. I think it's one of the reasons Sgt. Pepper was such a great record. Or Stand, Sly and the Family Stone's Stand album, that was their Sgt. Pepper. God, what a great record that was. And it really changed things a lot.
The other thing is that, we've talked about, and you have definitely done a variety of different music genres. And so the question I have to ask you is, what is funk to you? What is funk music to a Bill Champlin? What is funk?
Well, pretty much,
Champlin.
pretty much groove and pocket, you know? I mean, I saw James Brown band the first time at a matinee at a place in Oakland, California, afternoon matinee on January 1st, 1963. It changed my life. I went, man, that's really good. I wasn't that much of a fan of James. I was a fan of the band and the arrangements and how they could just turn on a dime and like a flock of birds. It's like, boom, all of a sudden they're turning to the left. It was just so great that I was marked for life. I mean, between listening to Lou Rawls when I was a kid and then suddenly hearing James Brown, and then later on, I mean, of course, there's Tower of Power. They were just as struck by that music as I was. They're still smoking. You know, I mean, once you got the bug, you know, the R&B bug, it's hard to let it go. It's like it hooks you in, and R&B music has always hooked me in. You know, I mean, when Stax Volt started kicking, man, I remember where I was the first time I heard Otis Redding sing. I went, "Oh my God, what is that?" And there's a thing about you know, I mean, he's not a guy you can really cop by any means. He had just such a, you could hear who he was in every note that he sang. And that to me is what I'm striving for. Aside from background arrangements and all the musical stuff, because I am a keyboard player and a guitarist, all that stuff is all really good. But when it comes to singing lead and stuff like that, Otis, you know, God, it's just really hard to imagine the world without him, and he's gone, and it's just a drag. I mean, what a monster that guy was, you know. So those things affected me, and they affected me a lot, and that's what kept me moving. And then I was really kind of aware of funk peripherally. I didn't pay much attention to it. And then George Clinton started kicking in with Parliament and Funkadelics and stuff like that, and all of a sudden it was like, oh, here's a new groove. Here's something cool. You gotta love that. And just, you know, it's hard to not just get into the pocket with you know, when somebody's playing along that line. Just great. Stax Volt killed me. I mean, the Booker T and the MGs were knocking me out. I mean, it's such a pocket. Al Jackson Jr., the drummer on most of those Otis records, and Sam and Dave and Wilson Pickett. I mean, it was all Al Jackson. God, what a great drummer. I mean, I've always thought the drummer's job is to excite the singer, whose job it is to excite the audience.
Huh.
And that's kind of always been sort of my approach. I mean, give me a pocket and I'm in it, you know.
What makes you happiest when you're doing your music? Is it singing or is it playing? What makes you?
Probably singing. Well, writing it to start with, you know, when you get a really good song, arranging it makes me happy. But singing it's really where, I mean, it's the, sort of the cherry on the cupcake of production. You know, you kind of the writing it is pretty much the foundation. The arranging it, putting it together, and recording it is sort of the house, and the singing is the bird feeder on the top of the house, at the very top of the food chain. I mean, that's kind of, it's like, that's where, you know, we put all this work together so I could have fun singing the thing. So I ain't singing for anybody else. I'm just singing to groove myself. Sometimes it gets recorded and somebody else hears it and it grooves them. So I mean, that's kind of sort of how it works, and at least for me anyway. I mean, it's all one thing.
What type of compliment is it to a writer to have someone else sing their song?
Really cool. It's a really cool thing. I mean, when Earth, Wind and Fire did After the Love, it was like, wow, how about that? George Benson, when he did Turn Your Love Around, I went, wow, how about that? I mean, I did the demo, and when Jay was producing George, he said, hey, George, come do it your own way. He says, whatever Bill did sounds good to me. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. George is a really good guy. What kind of musician is he? Whoa, scariest, one of the scariest guitar players on the earth. And then he opened his mouth and kaboom, you know. Same thing happened with Nat King Cole. He was a piano player. He was basically a piano player. And on one record, he decided to sing one song and everybody went, oh, wow, what is that? And that's because his whole career just went boom. Same thing happened with George. He's really known as a guitar player and didn't sing anything. And suddenly, the minute he sang one thing, I think his first record was that Leon Russell tune, Masquerade, and it just went through the roof. He was such a good singer. In addition to being one of the best bebop guitar players ever. I mean, I'm not saying now, but ever. Nobody will be able to touch it in terms of that kind of bebop groove. It's great. And there's a guy he's gone over, he's, put together, well, I'm not just a jazz guy, I'm a pop guy, and I'm an R&B guy, and I'm in this. And all of that just made his career even better. He's still playing gigs all over the place. Well, nobody is now because of this whole bit of business that we're all having to deal with. The virus and everything. It's kind of thrown a monkey wrench into a whole lot of careers, not just music. It's just the nature of the beast. You have to live with it somehow. But I'll tell you one thing: there's so many people locked down, especially in California, that if they have a studio, they've been working. I think that there's going to be albums coming out in 2021, almost the same level as there were babies coming out 9 months after the New York blackout. It's gonna be a boom. At some level, there's gonna be albums all over the place, myself included. I mean, I just kept myself from being too crazy bored. But I said, well, if there was ever a time to do a solo album, now's the time. So I just got down and started writing.
Tell me, why do you think it's important for us to have a Funk Music Hall of Fame?
That music has it's been the battery, I think, for pretty much every move that R&B has made. I mean, there's a lot of people consider R&B really slow songs, but funk it's so much more fun. I love some of the stuff. I mean, God, let's face it, some of those D'Angelo records, they're slow tunes, but oh my God, they're just great. It's insane great. But I wouldn't call it funk. I'd just say it's just really R&B or almost jazz in some way. It'd be so good. But there's something about funk. It's infectious. And I think that if you look at hip hop and what's going on with hip hop, without funk, that would have never happened. I'm not a real giant fan of rap, although I realize it's as much of an art form as poetry. And I think it's really great that they're doing it. It's just, I kind of miss melodies. When you hear a groove like that, you almost want to hear somebody singing over it and having fun. And first time I heard a rap record, I kept thinking it was the disc jockey talking until the singer came in. The singer never came in. The guy just kept, and I went, well, let me listen to what he's saying at this point. I realized it wasn't the normal thing. And it's really cool. I'm glad people have done what they've done with it. But boy, the grooves that funk were making are really, a lot of them are either sampled or definitely copied for some of the grooves that hip hop is using. So it really kind of was the beginning of it, I think.
And then we also, that one of the things that you've talked about that has an experience, and that is what we call blue-eyed soul and soft rock, and they're all kind of combined in there together, don't you think?
Well, if you look at Blue-Eyed Soul, there was an album. Remember, You'd Lost That Love and Feeling with the Righteous Brothers?
Yes.
There was an album before that. Their first album was called Blue-Eyed Soul. And Bill Medley sounded so good. There was just the low singer, you never close your eyes, that guy. He was, I think, probably, for what I've known about, he was one of the first major, blue-eyed soul guys. I mean, he still sings his butt off. He's just great. A really nice guy, too. But, Bobby Caldwell put out a record quite a few years back, What You Won't Do for Love. And it was a giant record. It was a big R&B record. And I think it was the Source Awards or something. They gave him an award for the best new black artist. And he walked on the stage and you could hear a pin drop in the building. And so, wait a minute, what's that? So, I think that at some point of the game, the blue-eyed soul thing just went, hey, I'm not going to buy somebody telling me that I have to do this because of any color that I am. That's a bunch of shit, as far as I'm concerned. It just doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I mean, at this point of the game, I'm not considered an R&B singer. I just do what I do. I had a sax player once, years and years ago, say, if you like it, steal it. Just don't steal from the same guy over and over again, or you just end up being a wannabe Lou Rawls or a wannabe Kenny Loggins or a wannabe Luther Vandross, who was also amazing. He said, just steal it. If you hear something by D'Angelo in the morning that you like, try to steal it. If you hear something by Willie Nelson that you like, try to steal it. And eventually forget who you're stealing from, and it'll all kind of mesh together. And what you get when you use all those things is you. And I always thought it was a really good piece of advice. So I keep my ears open to see if there's something out there that's coming. I remember the first time I heard Take Six, I just went, oh my God, what is this? I mean, I was aware of the high-lows and Singers Unlimited and real jazzy stuff, but Take Six had such soulful singers in it, and their voicings were amazing, and it just changed my life. I went, at least in terms of being an arranger, I went, that's enough of the triad, we're going to jump into this. And there's other people, there's a group out of Sweden called Dirty Loops. I think they're with Quincy Jones now, and it's amazing. That singer is just amazing. He's a white Swedish guy. He's not only a great piano player, but he's a ridiculous singer. I mean, he's singing like Stevie, except his own vibe, and just a range that goes up all the way up to note. I mean, he's just a guy named Jonah. Ridiculous. I mean, there are such good things happening. Even though the business itself is kind of in flux, certain people that are that good. There's a guy named Jacob Collier, who's amazing. I mean, his stuff that he's done is just so outrageous. It's just great. And so I try to keep my ear to the ground to see what's coming next. And maybe not necessarily next, but see who's really making it right for themselves, and their listeners. And some of these guys that I mentioned are just amazing. Esperanza Spalding came out of nowhere. So really great singer and a bass player. It's an amazing string bass player. Wow. Not expected, and I just kind of like the not expected. If it's not expected, it's the first thing I want to pay attention to. Because it's probably the next thing, Anyway.
Bill, that was really so well on what you had said, and I totally agree with you. And because, even when we talked about, I talked with one of the founding members of the Average White Band, and who would have thought that they were really Scottish,
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it. Van Morrison is Scotland and Ireland. There's a lot of good singers that have come out of that whole world over there. Van Morrison's a great singer. A guy named Alex Lidgerwood, unbelievable. He's just as good as it gets. There's a handful of cats that are Irish or Scottish or even English. A guy named Paul Carrack, unbelievable singer. He's sung on a million really, really great records. How Long by a group called Ace, Tempted by a group called Squeeze, and he's just been in a different band. He's good piano and organ player also. Just another one of those singers, and you just go, whoa, this guy's amazing. And I try to keep my ears open and see if anybody's doing that. And there are. Occasionally there's some young musicians. My son is amazing. He's singing great. He's a full tilt Berkeley grad. I mean, he knows he can read anything, and he's a big producer, major producer and stuff like that. And there's, even though the music business is kind of pulled kind of stuff out, and there's one thing that I really love about Funk Hall of Fame is that you're getting guys like James Brown and guys like George Clinton, Sly Stone, different people that have done that kind of music that need to have somebody say, hey, this was a big thing. And that's why that's why I'm doing this with you now, because I think it's great that this is happening. I think the Funk Hall of Fame makes a whole lot of sense.
What about the group 42? Level 42.
Oh, great. That bass player, Mark King, is a really good singer. He's probably one of the first call studio bass players in England, and it has been for years. Hey, listen to some of the old Beatles and dig the bass playing of Paul McCartney. He's one of the best bass players ever. He came up with such good bass lines and stuff. Is one of the things that made them so special. And Level 42 is one of my favorite bands. I love those guys.
You know, Bill, David Webb, which is the CEO of the Funk Music Hall of Fame, has so much regard for you.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you. I've talked to David on the telephone a couple of times. He's a good guy. You know, you guys, to put this Hall of Fame, this Funk Hall of Fame together is really, really a good thing. I'm glad somebody finally decided to do that. And to, instead of just R&B, it's the funk thing really was it was a battery for a lot of stuff that came after it. And there were a lot of really good funk groups. Some of the Ohio Players, and it's just amazing how many of those groups. The Commodores really started off being just a funk band, pretty much. Love that band. I thought they were great.
Bill, what would your advice or words to be for an upcoming artist? What would you suggest to them?
No, I mean, normally I would say, well, play as many gigs as you can, but I don't know if there's a lot of gigs out there. Or record as much as you can, write as much as you can. It used to be the incentive to getting into the music thing was that there was commerce. There was money in there somewhere. And it's, kind of like the carrot and the stick. That's the thing that you're kind of chasing after. At this point in the game, you got to really love it to do it because it's not easy. I mean, there's still a top 10, and there's 10 guys up there, 10 guys and girls. And there's, I can't really even say what a young musician should do. I mean, if there's any gigs to play. I think playing live really lets you know right away what this isn't working on the audience. Well, maybe this is, and eventually you start seeing what's gonna affect your audience. And for me, it's always been if you love it, they will. It's like what I said. The drummer's job is to excite the singer, whose job it is to excite the audience.
Thank you so much, Bill. I've really enjoyed this interview, and
Thank you.
Wish you the best, and Tamara, I wish her the best in keeping you straight.
Keeping me online somehow.
and I wish you the best in your music career, and thank you so much for doing this interview on Funk Chronicles.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I'm sorry about all the craziness. I just, California's been so on fire in so many places that Wi-Fi is going in and out everywhere. So it's just one of the things we've all kind of had to learn how to live with over here. Luckily, I think once we got it going, I think you and I probably got it.
I think we've done a good job.
We've been lucky once we got it moving,
And thank you for your support of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and exhibition.
I think it's a really needed thing, and I'm glad it's there. And I'm really happy that you're involved and that David's involved, and Vernon. Vernon is the guy that kind of turned me on to it. Vernon called a friend of mine, Imboden, who is a drummer that I've worked with over the years. He was with Chicago for probably longer than I was. And Tris said, "Yeah, here's Bill's phone number. Let's go take a whack at it." So it's nice to see you, and I hope you guys starting to get wintry out there, isn't it? Getting that way.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. So
yes, it's here. I mean, I'm looking at. I mean, a month ago it was 121 degrees here.
Oh my God, we're in the
really
Midwest. We're in the Midwest, so the weather right now is unpredictable. One day, like today, it'll be up to 80. Tomorrow, it'll probably be down to the 50s. So it is typical Midwestern weather.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Rhine McLin, host of the Funk Music Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center's award-winning show, Funk Chronicles. Until the next time, let's keep it funky. Funky, funky, funky.
Well, you called me up this morning Told me about the new love you found. I said I'm happy for you. I'm really happy for you. Found someone else. I guess I won't be coming round. I guess it's over, baby. It's really over, baby. Whoa.